Today we'll be taking a look at the SR Suntour NCX seat post, a coil-sprung suspension seat post designed to improve comfort over rough terrain. So stay tuned to see what I like, what I dislike, and whether it's worth putting on your bike. Good afternoon and welcome to the review. Before we take a look at the Suntour NCX, I'd just like to ask if you'd consider subscribing to the channel. I create videos centered on bikepacking and bike touring, which includes gear reviews, tips, tricks and tutorials, and even the occasional trip report. And in 1 month's time, I'll be leaving on an around-the-world bike trip of a lifetime, which I'll document right here. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, hit the button. So after many tens of thousands of kilometers bikepacking and bike touring, I've come to an important conclusion regarding comfort. Don't ask why it took that long. And that's that the quality of the surface you're riding on has a direct effect on saddle discomfort. Now, I know that seems obvious, but I'm not talking about the difference between a smooth pavement and a rock garden. I'm talking about a relatively minor difference, like between road and gravel. Small bumps, shocks, and vibrations can really add up over a long distance, more than you would think. And a suspension seat post is a fantastic solution for smoothing that out. So why would you use the Suntour over one of the other options out there? Well, let's take a look at the specs and maybe that'll give us some clues. The Suntour NCX offers 50 millimeters of travel via a parallelogram design with adjustable preload. It weighs 800 grams, features a 25 millimeter offset saddle clamp. It's available in all the common seat tube diameters and lengths of either 350 mm or 400 millimeters. It comes with a spring rated for riders up to 81 kilograms. However, a heavier spring is available for purchase separately, and you can also buy a neoprene cover to keep it nice and clean. And it cost me 130 Australian dollars. So the first thing you'll notice is that the NCX is very reasonably priced. It costs up to a third of the price of its competitors, and that makes it a pretty attractive proposition. Now, I'm not sure where those savings are coming from because I haven't used any of its competitors, but I can say that it's very, very well built. The fit and finish and general build quality is fantastic. Now, I've been using the Suntour for about 2 months now, mainly on gravel of varying degrees from buttery smooth to completely corrugated. So here are my thoughts. The first thing you need to do when you get the Suntour is to set the preload. And this is easily adjusted via the 6mm hex bolt in its base. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to set it up because there are plenty of videos out there that already do that. But I will say that it's going to take some experimentation. Suntour recommend a sag of 30%, but there isn't really any easy way of measuring that, so you're going to have to experiment. Now, despite the fiddling required, that does bring me to the first thing that I like about this post. And that's that it's easily adjustable just by turning a bolt, rather than having to switch out elastomers or anything like that. Now, once you get this thing set up, it is plush. It definitely feels a bit weird on your first ride with the saddle bobbing up and down, but once you get used to it, it is so comfortable. Over the last couple of months, every time I've seen a rough section coming up, I've intentionally kept myself planted to the saddle, and this thing just eats it up. 50 millimeters might not sound like a lot of travel, but it's more than you could need for any gravel riding. The parallelogram design is pretty interesting. The idea behind it is that the saddle moves in such a way that the distance to the cranks never changes. Rather than telescoping up and down and constantly shortening the distance to the bottom bracket, it moves in an arc towards the rear of the bike. Now, in terms of maintenance, I'm pretty sure all you need to do is remove the spring once in a while, give it all a clean out, and apply some fresh grease. And to do that, all you need to do is unscrew the preload bolt in the bottom. Super simple. So overall, the Suntour NCX is a pretty impressive piece of gear. I was super skeptical about suspension posts, but I have to say, I'm pretty impressed. So it's fair to say there's a lot to like about the NCX seat post, but what didn't I like? Alright, so first up isn't so much an issue with this particular seat post, but is more a quirk of this style of seat post in general. And that is that it's very active. Almost too active. You'll see in some of the footage that the post is bobbing up and down with every pedal stroke, which is obviously pretty inefficient. The suspension is definitely absorbing some of the power that you're trying to push through the pedals. Now, I did have the preload set particularly soft in that footage. I was experimenting with it at the time, so you probably won't get it as severely as that, but it is there. Now, this most likely isn't a problem for anyone who's doing some relaxed touring or commuting, but it's definitely an issue for people who want to ride fast and get optimum power transfer. And speaking of preload and whatnot, it's a total bummer that you have to buy an extra spring if you're a heavier rider. It'd be really nice if you could choose which spring that the Post came with when you buy it. The second issue I've found is that although I love the saddle clamp mechanism and how easy it is to fit or remove a saddle, it does offer limited adjustability. I found this a bit of an issue as I ride in quite an upright position and generally angle my saddles very slightly nose up. And with this seat post, I unfortunately can't do that. It's either dead flat or pitched up at a ridiculous angle. So how this plays out on your bike all depends on a few things like the angle of your seat tube and what saddle you're using and your own personal preferences. And finally, the biggest gripe that I have with this seat post is the 25mm setback, which is exaggerated by the parallelogram design. Again, you'll notice in the footage that my saddle is clamped all the way as far forward as it'll go, with the clamps as far back on the rails as I can get them. Now this makes for a pretty good position for me, but I don't need a setback seat post on this bike, and I'm having to really compensate to get the saddle where I want it. But then when I get on the bike, the saddle moves even further back due to the parallelogram design. And I find this just increases the reach of my bike a little bit too much for comfort. And more noticeably, it puts me too far behind the cranks and I really struggle to put any power down. Which is obviously compounded by the fact that the suspension soaks up some of the power as well. Now maybe it's because I'm a mountain biker and I'm used to riding a modern mountain bike with a fairly steep seat tube angle. But I enjoy a riding position that puts me right over the cranks and allows me to really mash on the pedals when I need to. So to summarize that last point, I guess make sure your bike and fit can accommodate a seat post like this. Alright, so subjective fit issues aside, I've been really impressed with the Suntour NCX. It is unbelievable what a difference it makes to comfort on rough terrain. And I'd recommend it for anyone who tours, commutes, or just rides in a fairly relaxed style and isn't concerned about having to put down some big watts. It's sturdily built, easy to maintain, and should give you years of faithful service. Alright, so that's what I think about the NCX seat post. What do you guys think? If you've used this seat post, or even another suspension seat post, I'd love to hear all about your experience down in the comments. And of course, if you've got any questions about it, ask away. If you liked the video or you found it useful, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. And of course, if you're thinking about buying the Suntour NCX seat post, consider doing it via the affiliate link in the description. Cheers!